Chapter 17 Locomotion and Movement. Movement is one of the significant features of living beings. Animals and plants exhibit a wide range of movements. Streaming of protoplasm in the unicellular organism like amoeba is a simple form of movement. Movement of cilia, flagella and tentacles are shown by many organisms. Human being can move limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Some of the movement result in a change of place or location. Such voluntary movement are called locomotion. Walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming are all some forms of locomotory movements. Locomotory structure need not be different from those affecting other types of movement. For example, in paramecium, cilia helps in the movement of food through the site of pharynx. Cilia helps in the movement of food through site of pharynx and in locomotion as well. Hydra can use its tentacles for capturing its prey and also use them for locomotion. We use limbs for change in body postures and locomotion as well. The above observation suggests that movement and locomotion cannot be studied separately. The two may be linked by stating that all locomotion are movement but all movements are not locomotion. You can remember it by L के बाद M आता है तो all locomotion are movement but all movement are not locomotion. उतर गया दिमाग में? ठीक है, चलो आगे. Methods of locomotion performed by animals vary with their habitats and the demand of the situation. However, locomotion is generally for search of food, shelter, mate, suitable breeding grounds, favorable climatic conditions, or to escape from enemies or predators. Next is types of movement. Cells of the human body exhibit three main types of movements, namely amoeboid, ciliary and muscular. Some specialized cells in our body like macrophages and leukocytes in blood exhibit amoeboid movement. कौन सी movement? Some specialized cells in our body like macrophages and leukocytes in blood exhibit amoeboid movement. It is effected by pseudopodia formed by the streaming of protoplasm, that is as in amoeba. Cytoskeletal elements like microfilaments are also involved in amoeboid movement. कौन है cytoskeletal element like microfilament are also involved in amoeboid movement. Ciliary movements occurs in most of our internal tubular organs which are lined by ciliated epithelium. The coordinated movement of cilia in the trachea helps us in removing dust particles and some of the foreign substances inhaled along with the atmospheric area. The coordinated movement of cilia in the trachea helps us in removing dust particles and some of the foreign substances inhaled along with the atmospheric air. So the next is passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by the ciliary movement. Passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by the ciliary movement. Movement of our limbs, jaws, tongues, etc. require muscular movement. The contractile property of muscles are effectively used for locomotion and other movements by human beings and majority of multicellular organisms. Locomotion requires a perfect coordinated activity of muscular, skeletal and neural system. In this chapter you will learn about the types of muscles, their structures, mechanism of their contraction and important aspects of the skeletal system. Muscle. You have studied in chapter 8 that the cilia and flagella are the outgrowths of the cell membrane. Cilia and flagella are the outgrowths of the cell membrane. Flagellar movement helps in the swimming of the spermatozoa. Maintenance of water currents in the canal system of sponges and in locomotion of protozoans like euglena. Flagellar movement helps in the swimming of spermatozoa, maintenance of water current in the canal system of sponges and in locomotion of protozoans like euglena. क्या है euglena? Protozoa. Muscle is a specialized tissue of mesodermal organ. कौन सा? Mesodermal organ. About 40 to 50% of the body weight of the human adult is contributed by muscles. They have special properties like excitability, contractibility, extensibility, and elasticity. Muscles have been classified using different criteria, namely location, appearance, and nature of regulation of their activities. Based on their location, three types of muscles are identified: skeletal, second visceral, third cardiac. फर्स्ट वी आर स्टार्टिंग स्केलेटल मसल. सुनना ठीक से, कान लगा, ठीक है. स्केलेटल मसल्स आर क्लोजली एसोसिएटेड विद द स्केलेटल कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द बॉडी. दे हैव ए स्ट्राइप्ड अपीयरेंस अंडर द माइक्रोस्कोप एंड हेंस आर कॉल्ड स्ट्राइएटेड मसल्स. Striated muscles. As their activities are under the control of the nervous system, they are known as voluntary muscles too. इनको अपन कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं, इसलिए वॉलेंट्री होते हैं. दे आर प्राइमरली इन्वॉल्व इन लोकोमोटरी एक्शंस एंड चेंजेस ऑफ बॉडी पोस्चर्स. अभी आपको खींच के चनकट पड़ जाए चाटो, तो उसमें क्या यूज़ होगा? स्केलेटल मसल. मीन्स पोस्चर चेंज हो रहा है हाथ का. नेक्स्ट इज विसरल मसल्स. Visceral muscles are located in the inner walls of hollow visceral organs of the body like the alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. They do not exhibit any striation and are smooth in appearance. They do not exhibit any striation and are smooth in appearance. Hence, they are called smooth muscles, that is non-striated muscle. Their activity are not under the voluntary control of the nervous system and are therefore known as involuntary muscles. They assist, for example, in the transportation of food through the digestive tract and gametes through the genital tract. Understood? वो involuntary है smooth muscle, अपन कुछ नहीं कर सकते भाई साहब उनका. Next is, as the name suggests, cardiac muscles are the muscles of heart. Many cardiac muscles cells assemble in a branching pattern to form a cardiac muscle. Based on appearance, cardiac muscles are striated. They are involuntary in nature as the nervous system does not control their activities directly. Understood? Because assertion reason बन सकता है, ठीक है. Cardiac muscles are involuntary in nature. Assertion reason is as the nervous system does not control their activities directly, इसलिए involuntary. Both assertion and reason is correct and reason is the right explanation of assertion. Okay. So next is, let us examine a skeletal muscle in detail to understand the structure and mechanism of contraction. Each organized skeletal muscle in our body is made of a number of muscle bundles or fascicles held together by a common collagenous connective tissue layer called fascia. Each muscle bundle contains a number of muscle fiber. Each muscle bundle contains a number of muscle fiber. Understood? Each muscle fiber is lined by the plasma membrane called sarcolemma, enclosing the sarcoplasm. Sarcolemma enclosing the sarcoplasm. Muscle fiber is syncytium as the sarcoplasm contains many nuclei. कौन nuclei करता है? Many contain sarcoplasm. The endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber, is the storehouse of calcium ions. कौन से आयन? कैल्शियम आयंस. A characteristic feature of the muscle fiber is the presence of a large number of parallelly arranged filaments in the sarcoplasm called myofilaments or myofibrils. A large number of parallelly arranged filaments in the sarcoplasm called myofilaments or myofibril. A characteristic feature of the muscle fiber है, ठीक है? Presence of large number of parallelly arranged filament in the sarcoplasm called myofilaments or myofibrils. Each myofibril has alternate dark and light bands on it. Understood? A detailed study of the myofibril has established that the striated appearance is due to the distribution pattern of two important proteins, actin and myosin. कौन से? Actin और myosin. The light band contains actin and is called I band or isotropic band, whereas the dark band called A or anisotropic band contains myosin. ठीक है? एनिस्ट्रोपिक बैंड ए बैंड है, वो क्या कंटेन करता है? मायोसिन. ठीक है? और लाइट बैंड कंटेन करता है एक्टिन. बोथ द प्रोटीन्स आर अरेंज्ड as rod like structure parallel to each other and also to the longitudinal axis of the myofibrils. Actin filament are thinner as compared to the myosin filament. Actin thin है, actin are, actin से याद रख सकते हो, मीन्स एसिटिन थिन है, as compared to the myosin filaments, hence are commonly called thin and thick filaments respectively. ठीक है? रेस्पेक्टिव मतलब एक्टिन थिन और myosin thick. In the center of the each I band is an elastic fiber called jade line which bisects it. In the center of each I band is an elastic fiber called jade line which bisects it. The thin filaments are firmly attached to the jade line. The thick filament in the membrane called M line. The thick filaments in the A band are also held together in the middle of this band by a thin fibrous membrane called M line. Understood? Thick filament जो होते हैं कौन से होते हैं? मोटे, myosin. The A band are also held together in the middle of this band by a thin fibrous membrane called M line. The A and I bands are arranged alternately throughout the length of the myofibril. The portion of the myofibril between two successive Z lines is considered as the functional unit of contraction. The portion of the myofibril between two successive Z lines is considered as the functional unit of contraction and is called sarcomere. क्या है sarcomere? Portion of myofibril between two successive Z lines is considered as the functional unit of contraction and is called sarcomere. In a resting state, the edges of the thin filament on either side of the thick filament partially overlap the free ends of the thick filament, leaving the center part of the thick filament. क्या कर रही है? रेस्टिंग स्टेट में थोड़ा थोड़ा ले रही है. ओवरलैप द फ्री एंड्स ऑफ द थिक, ओवरलैप कर रही है मीन्स साइड filament leaving the central part of the thick filaments. This center part of the thick filament and not overlapped by the thin filament is called the edge zone. Understood? The center part of thick filament and thin filament not overlapped by thin filament is called edge zone. कौन सा जोन? edge zone. और किससे overlap? not overlapped by thin filament means actin से. जेट लाइन है, ये आई बैंड है, ए बैंड है, एज. अंडरस्टूड? चलो नेक्स्ट. नींद तो नहीं आ रही ना? चलो. स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ कॉन्ट्रेक्टाइल प्रोटीन्स. ईच एक्टिन thin filament is made up of two filamentous actin. So let's move forward. चलो आगे चलते. Each actin, that is thin filament, is made of two F filamentous actins helically wound to each other. Helically wound to each other. Each F actin is a polymer of monomeric G, that is globular actins. Two filaments of another protein, that is tropomyosin, also run close to the F actins throughout its length. Two filaments of another protein, tropomyosin, also run close to the F actins throughout its length. समझ गए? A complex protein, troponin, is distributed at regular intervals on the tropomyosin. Tropomyosin के रेगुलर इंटरवल पे क्या डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड होते हैं? ट्रोपोनिन. ठीक है, ट्रोपोमायोसिन पे ट्रोपोनिन. In the resting state, a subunit of troponin masks the active binding site for myosin on the actin filaments. Each myosin, that is thick filament, myosin मतलब मोटे मतलब thick filament, is also a polymerized protein. Many monomeric protein called meromyosins constitute one thick filament. Each meromycin has two important parts, a globular head with a short arm and a tail. The former being called the heavy meromycin, that is HMM, and the latter the light meromycin, that is LMM. Each meromycin has two important parts, a globular head with short arm and a tail. ठीक है, globular head with short arm and a tail. The former being called the heavy meromycin and the latter the light meromycin. Understood? The heavy meromycin component, that is the head and short arm, कौन से हैं heavy meromycin के? Head and short arm, project outward at regular distance and angle from each other from the surface of polymerized myosin filament. From the surface of polymerized myosin filament and is known as cross arm. The HMM component, head and short arm, project outward at regular distance and angle from each other from the surface of polymerized myosin filament and is known as cross arm. The globular head is an active ATPase enzyme and has the binding site for ATP and active sites for actin. Binding site for ATP and active site for actin. ठीक है, समझ गया? ठीक है बच्चों, तो चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. डायग्राम दिया हुआ है यहाँ पे एक्टिन का, थिन फिलामेंट का, मायोसिन मेरोमाइसिन का. ठीक है, एक्टिन बाइंडिंग की साइड आगे है और एटीपी बाइंडिंग साइड की पीछे. एटीपी बाइंडिंग साइड पीछे है एक्टिन के, आगे हेड है और क्रॉस आर्म दिया हुआ है डायग्राम में. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट इज मैकेनिज्म ऑफ मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन. Mechanism of muscle contraction is best explained by the sliding filament theory, which states that contraction of a muscle fiber takes place by the sliding of the thin filament over the thick filaments. Muscle contraction is initiated by a signal sent by the CNS, that is central nervous system, via a motor neuron. A motor neuron along with the muscle fiber. A motor neuron along with the muscle fiber connected to it constitute a motor unit. A motor neuron along with the muscle fiber connected to it constitute a motor unit. The junction between a motor neuron and the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber is called the neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. The junction between a motor neuron and the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber is called the neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. ठीक है, समझ गए? चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. A neural signal reaching this junction releases a neurotransmitter, that is acetylcholine. क्या रिलीज करती है? एसिटाइल कोलिन, विच जनरेट्स एन एक्शन पोटेंशियल इन द सार्कोलेमा। कहाँ पे जनरेट करती है एक्शन पोटेंशियल? सार्कोलेमा में। दिस स्प्रेड्स थ्रू द मसल फाइबर एंड कॉसेज द रिलीज ऑफ कैल्शियम आयन into the sarcoplasm and causes the release of calcium ions into the sarcoplasm. Increase in calcium level leads to the binding of calcium with a subunit of troponin on actin filament and thereby remove the masking of active sites for myosin. Understood? Increase in calcium level leads to the binding of calcium with a subunit of troponin on the actin filaments and thereby remove the masking of active sites for myosin. Utilizing the energy from ATP hydrolysis, the myosin head now binds to the exposed site, now binds to the active sites, now binds to the active exposed sites on actin to form a cross bridge. The myosin head now binds to the exposed active sites on actin to form a cross bridge. Understood? डायग्राम दिया हुआ है एक्टिन फिलामेंट, उसके नीचे है पी एडीपी, ठीक है, वो घूमा आगे बढ़ा क्रॉस ब्रिज, मायोसिन हेड फॉर्मेशन ऑफ क्रॉस ब्रिज हुआ, आगे बढ़ा स्लाइडिंग रोटेशन पी एडीपी, आगे गया ब्रेकिंग ऑफ क्रॉस ब्रिज हुआ, ठीक है, फिर मायोसिन फिलामेंट बन गया, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट इज this pulls the attached actin filament towards the center of A band. The Z line attached to these actins are also pulled inward, thereby causing a shortening of sarcomere, that is contraction. It is clear from the above steps that during shortening of the muscles, that is contraction, the I band gets reduced whereas the A band retains the length. यहाँ बहुत पूछा गया क्वेश्चन है, द आई बैंड गेट्स reduced while whereas the A band retains the length. The myosin releasing the ADP and P1 goes back to its released site. The myosin releasing the ADP and P1 goes back to its relaxed state. A new ATP binds and the cross bridge is broken. The ATP is again hydrolyzed by the myosin head. The ATP is again hydrolyzed by the myosin head and the cycles of cross bridge formation is and breakage is repeated, causing further sliding. And the cycle of cross bridge formation and breaking is repeated, causing further sliding. अंडरस्टूड? यहाँ पे डायग्राम दिया हुआ है रिलैक्स्ड का, जिसमें खुले पड़े हुए हैं जेड लाइन के बीच एज जोन, आई बैंड होता है जेड लाइन के एक एज जोन और ए बैंड के बीच में होता है आई बैंड, ठीक है, कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग दिया हुआ है, मैक्सिमली कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड दिया हुआ है। द स्लाइडिंग फिलामेंट थ्योरी ऑफ मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन मूवमेंट ऑफ द थिन फिलामेंट एंड द रिलेटिव साइज ऑफ द आई बैंड एंड एज बैंड इज गिवन इन दिस डायग्राम. So the next is the process continues till the calcium ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae, resulting in the masking of the actin filament. This causes the return of the Z line back to their original position, that is relaxation. The reaction time of the fibers can vary in different muscles. Repeated activation of the muscle can lead to the accumulation of the lactic acid due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen in them. Causing fatigue. Muscle contains a red-colored oxygen storing pigment called myoglobin. Myoglobin content is high in some of the muscles, which gives a reddish appearance. Such muscles are called the red fibers. These muscles also contain plenty of mitochondria, which can utilize the large amount of oxygen stored in them for ATP production. These muscles therefore can also be called aerobic muscles. On the other hand, some of the muscles possesses very less quantity of myoglobin and therefore appear pale or whitish. These are the white fibers. ठीक है. The muscle also contain plenty of mitochondria which can utilize the large amount of oxygen stored in them for ATP production. These muscles therefore can also be called aerobic muscles. On the other hand, some of the muscles possesses very less quantity of the myoglobin and therefore appear pale or whitish. These are the white fibers. Number of mitochondria are also few in them, but the amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum is high. Amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum high होता है. ठीक है. They depend on anaerobic process for energy. इस पर डिपेंड करते हैं anaerobic process पे एनर्जी के लिए. Next is skeletal system. Skeletal system consists of a framework of bones and few cartilages. This system has a significant role in movement shown by the body. Imagine chewing food without jaws bone and walking around without the limb bones. Bones and cartilage are specialized connective tissue. The former has a very hard matrix due to calcium salts in it, and the latter has slightly pliable matrix due to chondroitin salts. Bones में क्या होता है? Hard matrix due to calcium salts और cartilage में slightly pliable matrix due to chondroitin salts. Clear? In human beings, this system is made up of 206 bones and a few cartilages. It is grouped into two principal divisions, the axial and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton comprises 80 bones distributed along the main axis of the body. The skull, vertebral column, sternum and ribs constitute the axial skeleton. क्या क्या कंसिस्ट करते हैं एक्सियल स्केलेटन? स्कल, वर्टिब्रल कॉलम, स्टर्नम एंड रिब्स. स्कल, वर्टिब्रल कॉलम, स्टर्नम एंड रिब्स. क्लियर? उतर गया माइंड में? चलो तो आगे बढ़ते हैं. द स्कल इज कंपोज्ड ऑफ टू सेट्स ऑफ बोन्स, क्रेनियल एंड फेशियल. क्रेनियल एंड फेशियल दैट टोटल्स टू 22 बोन्स. 22 बोन्स होती है स्कल में, खोपड़ी में. क्रेनियल बोन्स आर 8 इन नंबर. क्रेनियल कितनी होती है? 8 इन नंबर. दे फॉर्म द हार्ड प्रोटेक्टिव आउटर कवरिंग cranium for the brain. They form the hard protective outer covering cranium for the brain. The facial rind is made up of 14 skeletal elements which form the front part of the skull. Front part of the skull कौन फॉर्म करते हैं? The facial rind is made up of 14 skeletal elements which form the front part of the skull. A single U-shaped bone called the hyoid is present at the base of the buccal cavity and it is also included in the skull. कहाँ पे included है? स्कल में. यहाँ पे it is also की जगह it is not included कर देगा, but correct है, it is also included in the skull. बन रहे क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. Each middle ear contain 3 tiny bones, malleus, incus and stapes, collectively called ear ossicles. The skull rinds articulate with the superior rind. The skull rind articulates with the superior rind of the vertebral column with the help of 2 occipital condyles, that is dicondylic skull. The skull rind articulates with the superior rind of the vertebral column with the help of 2 occipital condyles, that is dicondylic skull. Our vertebral column is formed by 26 serially arranged units called vertebrae and is dorsally placed. कहाँ पे? dorsally. चेंज करके कुछ भी कर सकता है, but correct है, dorsally placed. It extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. It extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. Understood? ठीक है. चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. ठीक है. Each vertebrae has a central hollow portion, that is neural canal, through which the spinal cord passes. First vertebrae is the atlas and it articulates with the occipital condyles. किसके साथ आर्टिकुलेट करता है? ऑसिपिटल कॉन्डियल्स के साथ. The vertebral column is differentiated into cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused, coccygeal 1 fused rines starting from the skull. Again I am repeating it. Cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused and coccygeal 1 fused. Rines starting from the skull. The number of cervical vertebrae are 7 in almost all mammals, including human being. It is true statement. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord, supports the head, and serve as the point of attachment for the ribs and musculature of the back. Sternum is a flat bone on the ventral midline of thorax. Is the flat bone on the ventral midline of the thorax. There are 12 pair of ribs. Each rib is a thin flat bone connected dorsally to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum. कितने पेयर होते हैं? 12 pair of rib. Each rib is thin flat bone connected dorsally, means dorsally to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum. Clear? So next, it has two articulation surfaces on its dorsal end and is hence called bicephalic. First 7 pair of ribs are called true ribs. Dorsally, they are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum. Dorsally, they are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum with the help of a hyaline cartilage. The 8th, 9th and 10th pair of ribs do not articulate directly with the sternum but join the 7th rib with the help of hyaline cartilage. The 8th, 9th and 10th pair of ribs do not articulate directly with the sternum but joins the 7th rib with the help of hyaline cartilage. These are called vertebrochondral, that is false ribs. Vertebrochondral false ribs. Last 2 pairs, that is 11th and 12th of ribs are not connected ventrally and are therefore called floating ribs. Last 2 pairs, 11th and 12th of the ribs are not connected ventrally and are therefore called floating ribs. Thoracic vertebrae, ribs and sternum together form the rib cage. क्या बनाते हैं rib cage? Thoracic vertebrae, ribs और sternum मिलकर rib cage बनाते हैं. Thoracic vertebrae, ribs and sternum मिलकर क्या बनाते हैं? Rib cage. Understood? Clear? Next is the bones of the limbs along with their girdles constitute the appendicular skeleton. The bones of the limbs along with the girdles, the bones of the limbs along with their girdles constitute the appendicular skeleton. Axial पढ़ लिया है, appendicular पढ़. Each limb is made up of 30 bones. Limb is 30 bones made up of. The bones of the head, that is forelimb, are humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, wrist bones 8 in number and metacarpals, palm bone 5 in number. Understood? The bones of the hand, forelimb are humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, wrist bone कहते हैं CW, तो याद रख सकते हैं 18 नंबर. मेटाकार्पल को MP से याद रख सकते हैं पाम बोन्स. कितने हैं? 5 इन नंबर. एंड phalanges, digits 14 in number. Femur, that is thigh bone, the longest bone. Tibia and fibula, tarsals, ankle bones 7 in number and metatarsal 5 in number and phalanges, digits 14 in number are the bones of the legs. Limb, that is hind limb. Okay, again I am repeating it. Femur, the thigh bone, the longest bone is the femur. Tibia and fibula, tarsal, ankle bone 7 in number, metatarsal 5 in number, phalanges 14 in number, digits कहते हैं, are the bones of the leg. are the bones of the legs, that is hind limb. A cup-shaped bone called patella cover the knee ventrally, that is kneecap. Pectoral and the pelvic girdles bones help in the articulation of the upper and the lower limb, respectively with the axial skeleton. Pectoral and the pelvic girdle bones. Pectoral and the pelvic girdle bones help in the articulation of the upper and the lower limbs, respectively with the axial skeleton. Each girdle is formed of two halves. Each half of the pectoral girdle consists of a clavicle and the scapula. Scapula is a large triangular flat bone situated on the dorsal part of the thorax between the second and the seventh rib. The dorsal flat triangular body of a scapula has a slightly elevated ridge called the spine, which projects as a flat expanded process called the acromion. The clavicle articulates with this. Acromion के साथ clavicle articulate करती है. Below the acromion is a depression called the glenoid cavity, which articulate with the head of humerus to form the shoulder joint. Each clavicle is a long slender bone with two curvatures. This bone is commonly called the collar bone. Pelvic girdle consists of two coxal bones. Understood? Each coxal bone is formed by the fusion of three bones: ilium, ischium and pubis. At the point of fusion of the above bones is a cavity called acetabulum, to which the thigh bone articulates. The two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form the pubic symphysis containing fibrous cartilage. कौन से cartilage? Fibrous cartilage. The two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form the pubic symphysis containing fibrous cartilage. कौन से cartilage? Fibrous. Next is joints. Joints are essential for all types of movement. Involving the bony parts of the body. Locomotory movements are no exception to this. Joints are points of contact between bones or between bones and cartilages. डबल लाइन इसलिए पढ़ता हूँ ताकि आपके माइंड में सेट हो जाए, ठीक है, और इसलिए धीरे पढ़ता हूँ. Force generated by the muscles is used to carry out movement through the joint, whereas the joint acts as a fulcrum. The movability at this point vary depending on different factors. Joints have been classified into three major structural forms, namely fibrous, cartilaginous and synovial. Fibrous joints do not allow any movement. Fibrous joints do not allow any movement. ठीक है. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull bones which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue in the form of sutures to form the cranium. Understood? Double repeat करो. चलो एक बार. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull bone which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue in the form of sutures to form the cranium. In cartilaginous joints, the bones involved are joined together with the help of cartilages. The joint between the adjacent vertebrae in the vertebral column is of this pattern and it permits limited movements. Synovial joints are characterized by the presence of a fluid-filled cavity. अरे यार cavity, fluid-filled synovial cavity, ठीक है, are characterized by the presence of fluid-filled synovial cavity between the articulating surface of the two bones. Such an arrangement allows considerable movements. This joint helps in the locomotion and many other movements. Ball and socket joint is present between humerus and pectoral girdle. Ball and socket joint कहाँ पे होता है? Between humerus and pectoral girdle. हिंग joint होता है नी joint में, जैसे नी joint कहते हैं, ठीक है. पाइवट joint होता है एटलस और एक्सिस के बीच, इसे याद रख सकते हैं, PAA. ग्लाइडिंग joint होता है between the carpal GC and the saddle joint होता है carpal and metacarpal के बीच में SCM. Of the thumb, between carpal and metacarpal of thumb are some examples of synovial joints. So the disorders of muscular and skeletal system. First is myasthenia gravis, that is autoimmune disorder affecting neuromuscular junction leading to fatigue, weakening and paralysis of skeletal muscle. GI से याद रख सकते हैं इसको, ग्रेविस को इम्यून डिसऑर्डर कहते हैं, ऑटो इम्यून डिसऑर्डर, ठीक है. और मस्कुलर डायस्ट्रोफी को डीजे से याद रख सकते हैं, मीन्स जेनेटिक है. मस्कुलर डायस्ट्रोफी दैट इज प्रोग्रेसिव डीजनरेशन ऑफ स्केलेटल मसल मोस्टली ड्यू टू द जेनेटिक डिसऑर्डर. नेक्स्ट इज टेटानी, रैपिड स्पैम्स दैट इज वाइल्ड कॉन्ट्रैक्शन इन मसल्स ड्यू टू लो कैल्शियम इन द बॉडी फ्लूइड. ड्यू टू द लो कैल्शियम इन द बॉडी फ्लूइड. यहाँ तक क्वेश्चन आते ही आते हैं, इसलिए सेट कर लो माइंड में. एर्थराइटिस दैट इज इन्फ्लेमेशन ऑफ जॉइंट्स को क्या कहते हैं? एर्थराइटिस. ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस, एज रिलेटेड डिसऑर्डर कैरेक्टराइज्ड बाय द डिक्रीज्ड बोन मास एंड इंक्रीज्ड चांसेस ऑफ फ्रैक्चर्स. डिक्रीज्ड लेवल ऑफ एस्ट्रोजन इज अ कॉमन कॉज. नेक्स्ट इज गाउट, inflammation of joints due to accumulation of uric acid crystals is known as gout. Next is summary. We are going to read in a speedy way. Movement is essential feature for all living beings. Protoplasmic streaming, ciliary movement, movement of fin, limbs, wings, etc. are some forms exhibited by animals. A voluntary movement which causes the animal to change its place is called locomotion. Animal move generally in search for food, shelter, mate, breeding ground, better climate, or to protect themselves. The cells of the human body exhibit amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular movements. Locomotion and many other movements require coordinated muscular activities. 3 types of muscles are present in our body. Skeletal muscles are attached to the skeletal element. They appear striated and are voluntary in nature. Striated and voluntary in nature. Visceral muscles present in the inner walls of the visceral organ are non-striated and involuntary. Cardiac muscle are the muscle of the heart. They are striated, branched and involuntary. Muscle possesses excitability, extensibility, contractibility and elasticity. Excitability, contractibility, extensibility and elasticity. Muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle. Each muscle fiber has many parallelly arranged myofibrils. Each myofibrils contain many serially arranged units called sarcomere, which are the functional units. Each myofibril contain many serially arranged units called the sarcomere, which are functional units. Each sarcomere has a center A band made of thick myosin filament and 2 half I band made of thin actin filament on either side of it, marked by Z lines. Actin and myosin are polymerized protein with contractibility. The active site for myosin on resting actin filament are marked by a protein troponin. Myosin head contains ATPase and has ATP binding site and active sites for actin. A motor neuron carries signal to the muscle fiber, which generate an action potential in it. This causes the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Calcium activates actin which bind to the myosin head to form a cross bridge. The cross bridge pull the actin filament, causing them to slide over the myosin filament and thereby causing contraction. Calcium are then returned to sarcoplasmic reticulum which inactivate the actin. Cross bridges are broken and the muscles relax. Repeated stimulation of muscle lead to fatigue. चलो अगेन पढ़ता हूँ स्लोली, ठीक है. The active sites for myosin on the resting actin filament are marked by a protein troponin. Myosin head contains ATPase and has ATP binding sites and active sites for actin. A motor neuron carries signal to the muscle fiber which generates an action potential in it. This causes the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Calcium activates actin which binds to the myosin head to form a cross bridge. This cross bridge pulls the actin filament, causing them to slide over the myosin, that is thin filament, and thereby causing contraction. Calcium are then returned to sarcoplasmic reticulum which inactivate the actin. Cross bridges are broken and the muscle relax. Cross bridges are broken and the muscle relax. Repeated stimulation of muscles lead to fatigue. Muscles are classified as red and white fibers based primarily on the amount of red colored myoglobin pigment in them. Bones and cartilages constitute our skeletal system. The skeletal system is divisible into axial and the appendicular. Skull, vertebral column, ribs and sternum constitute the axial skeleton. Skull, vertebral column, ribs and sternum axial skeleton में आते हैं. Limb bone and girdles forms the appendicular skeleton. Limb bone और girdle किस में आते हैं? Appendicular skeleton. Three types of joints are formed between bones or between bones and cartilages, that is fibrous, cartilaginous and synovial. Synovial joints allow considerable movement and therefore play a significant role in locomotion. With this, we completed the chapter Locomotion and Movement. Thank you for hearing.